Before we begin, I just want to say a genuine thank you to all of you who support this work. Whether you're a long-time subscriber or have just joined recently, you are the reason that these conversations can exist independently without corporate sponsors or any outside pressure. This space is for deeper exploration, honest conversations, and asking questions that, to be honest, are often avoided elsewhere. And if you're feeling overwhelmed trying to apply what we've discussed to your own life, or you're dealing with a recent diagnosis or a chronic illness, remember that my consultations are where we can explore your situation one-to-one and bring personalized clarity. Right, folks, let's begin. You're Howard. Your real name is Howard.
My real name is Howard, but I usually go by my pen name, Etienne de la Boetie. If you want to talk about that, we can. But
I know, but is your real name is a secret?
Well, it's not a secret in the sense. So, are you want to do this on screen or on? I mean, do you want to do this in the interview or before we do it?
We're recording now. It's like whatever you like.
Well, I figured you might edit it out, but the story behind my pen name is, in my books, I expose the hidden curriculum of the government school system. And when I started doing this, my kids were in the government school system, and I didn't want them to get any heat for what Dad was doing. And so I chose the pen name of Etienne de la Boetie squared, the 16th century political philosopher who was really the first to expose the tricks and the techniques that rulers use, not just to get obedience, but to get fealty and adoration and God save the Queen and all hail the chief. And now both of my sons are, they've graduated. One's graduated from college, one's about to, and I could go back to my real name, but now everybody knows me by Etienne, and that's the only way you can find my work on the internet. So that's why I stick with the pen name.
Well, that's fine. Well, listen, look, to me, you're still Howard, but we're going to carry on calling you Etienne now because I think there is a story even in that. I mean, because you've done Etienne de la Boetie #2 squared, like you're the second iteration of it. I mean, which is lovely. I mean, because people need to know about him, and there's some people like in the circle space will know who this guy is because he's a legend. I mean, at the end of the day, he was about 20 when he wrote this book, Discourse on why is it that people give away their sovereignty to tyrannical leaders. And it's kind of incredible, like 500-600 years ago you had this guy writing that. And I think one of the things I realized in life is I had such a naive look at life. I used to just think today we are the best versions of humanity, and in the past people were just backward, uncivilized. But it's not the case. Human beings are human beings, and for thousands of years we've had the capacity to think and reason and have philosophy. And that's why you had Socrates and Aristotle and all these other great people. And 600 years ago, you had this great thinker called Etienne in France, who's like, what is it with us dumbasses? Why do we give our power away? So can you just spend a bit of time talking about Etienne for those listeners who don't really know much about him? Because I think that in itself is even just a great little introduction.
So, many people refer to him as the first voluntarist. And, voluntarism is really the idea that all, relations between people should be voluntary, that nobody has an exception for morality. Nobody has rights that other people don't. And if everything has to be voluntary, then you can't really have a moral, legitimate government. And that's really one of the things that the original Etienne de la Boetie was exposing, was that the governments of the time, which were monarchies, were running a variety of unethically manipulative tricks and techniques on their populations to get them to go along with having a monarch, having a ruling class. And one of the fascinating things is that a lot of those techniques are still being used today. And so, I took his nom de plume or pen name or nom de guerre war name, because I'm doing his work in the modern age, and what I do with my books, Government, the Biggest Scam in History Exposed, and to see the cage is to leave it, is I really break down the fact that governments are running a playbook, that there's a playbook of how do you, take a group of people, how do you compact them into an artificial tribe. And when I say, artificial tribe, here in the United States, if you live in Maine, you don't have a lot in common with somebody that lives in the desert of New Mexico. If you live in Hawaii, you don't have a lot of, really in common with somebody that lives on the plains of Oklahoma. If you live in the Pacific Northwest near Portlandia, you don't have a lot in common with the conservatives in Florida. And so what the rulers do is they've created an artificial tribe, and they're running a variety of techniques, from the mandatory government school to the monopolization of the media to putting things into popular culture to trick the population, whether it be in the United Kingdom or whether it be in Germany or wherever it is, into self-identifying as an American or a Brit or a Japanese, and so that population can be tax farmed, that they believe it's legitimate to have other people rule them, that some people have rights that other people don't, and that that government itself is moral, even if it isn't, and even if you don't want to go along with it, and even if you disagree. And so what I do in the books is I break down these techniques the same way that the original Etienne de la Boetie was doing back in the 1500s.
Beautiful. I also just want to say thank you so much for sending me your books. I love it. I love it. Government, the biggest scam in history. I mean, they're a bunch of freaking mafia racket, if you ask me. And I love this one as well. To see the cage is to leave it. Really appreciate you sending me these things, because I've been using them as resources to teach my kids as well, by the way. And they're brilliant. They're very easy to read. You can read them literally in an afternoon. And it's just, I think for some people it'll be eye-opening, just knowing how the system operates. But I want to just go back to Etienne. I mean, God bless that guy, right? I mean, he writes this book, Discourse on Voluntary Servitude. And the key word there is voluntary, because like you said, he was talking about voluntarism, which is the only ism that I really like you. But what he was saying in that book was, we voluntarily give our power away, and he's saying, look, stop giving your volunteering your power and giving it away to these tyrants. Instead, you can practice voluntarism with your colleagues and your friends and your neighbors, and you know what, you come together with no coercion, no physical power backing up it, come to agreements where everybody's a win-win situation. Because right now, government is certainly not a win-win situation. And I think, another thing in his book, he kind of broke down how we're born into this habit of obedience. Like once you're born into it, you forget that there is no memory of freedom. So you almost have to live freedom. You need to understand freedom to fight for it. But if you've never known freedom, and there is an amnesia, historical amnesia about what even freedom is, how can you fight for it? How can you try and reclaim it? So that's a problem. And then there's education, especially with that Prussian schooling system, customs, educations, rituals, obedience, myths about legitimacy. And then we get distracted, literally the bread and circuses, whether it's festivals, games, spectacles, and then little rewards for people who practice, privileges to those who participate in the system. And then there's this hierarchy of dependency, because power spreads through networks. It's not just like one tyrant king or one evil banker, like the Epstein files have revealed. It's layers of power as a network where, the tyrant controls a small group, and they control another layer below them, and that layer controls another layer below them. And that's how you get the pyramid structure. And for example, doctors and lawyers and journalists are paid a lot of money because they are enforcers of that power structure. Like, police officers, for example, police officers, they shoot someone and they never go to jail. Doctors kill people, they very rarely go to jail. They get a little slap on the wrist or something. But these structures need to be protected because they uphold the structure above them. And then it's not really just about fear. They use fear, but that alone doesn't sustain power. You would need to have a lot of violence to maintain power. They just get it through obedience, through social programming. And then the other problem that I talk about is that there's a loss of courage. And collective imagination and moral integrity, and that's just lacking in the backbone of society now. I think these are the kind of things he talked about. So I don't blame you for picking his name, because he's always been a bit of a hero to me, by the way. Etienne.
Oh, that's fantastic. I wish more people understood him, and his key message, which you touched on, but I'd like to just kind of talk about that. People are giving away their power to these governments, and that the tyrants, the presidents, and the kings, and others at the top of the pyramid, they have no real power of themselves. All of the power is invested. And, one of the things he said is, if you just simply withdraw that power, that the tyrant will fall as if a giant colossus, brought down by gravity. And so if people would just quit, would say that the most powerful word in the universe, no, we're not going along with that. We don't recognize your authority. We understand that you're running game on people. Then, the system would end very, very quickly. And what I'm trying to do is, I'm trying to, what I've discovered in having dozens, hundreds now, maybe, like hundreds and hundreds of conversations with people that have been, maybe new to this information or had no idea this was going on, is that, the governments are running these tricks on the population. And once somebody finds out, oh, wait, they're tricking me, they're running game on me. Well, nobody likes to be tricked. Nobody likes to get chumped. Nobody likes to have, game run on them. Nobody likes to be the fool. And so once people realize that, they really changes their attitude, and they're out. And so a lot of what I do is I show people how the magician is doing the trick. And once people figure out that they're being tricked into a worldview, that they're having the information in society controlled to them, either through the mandatory government school or the monopolization of the media or the algorithmic censorship of the internet, a lot of people don't realize that that's going on to the extent that it is. But once they get it, they're out. They're not going to participate anymore. And so that really is the power of the books. And what I'm doing is I'm showing people how the magician does the trick.
Yeah, the Wizard of Oz. Pull that curtain back. You do a very good job. So listen, I think through history we've had like chieftains, head of the tribe, and then sometimes some of them go a bit rogue and become warlords and want to eat up all the other tribes. And then sometimes you then get a king, and then sometimes the king gets captured to like the people who he's borrowing money from, and then the kings get transformed to parliaments and governments that are equally just a bunch of rich scumbags. And then at some point, the government gets captured by the banking people. And I think that's where we are now, isn't it? I mean, in your book, right early on, you say the intergenerational organized crime system behind the US government, I mean, to be honest, I think it's all governments at this stage, is running what can be characterized as a form of a pimp game on their populations to trick them into illogical and immoral pseudo-religious belief system. So before we get to that intergenerational organized crime system, let's talk about the government, right? Because a lot of people are brought up in what you describe and I describe as a cult, a religious kind of belief system. So let's talk about the religion of statism, because there are some people who are awakening, but they're still holding on to that notion that we need government. And they'll go to the point where they'll be like, oh, we need a small government, but we need the government, because we need them to run the trains and the roads and, that kind of stuff. I'm full on anarchist now. The a real definition of anarchy. But can you just explain, why is the belief in the government like a religion?
Because it's being indoctrinated into the population from the time that you're young as a pseudo religion. And so here in the United States, and I know it's a little bit, different in Britain and in other countries, but here in the United States, you're going to be forced to go to either the mandatory government school, which is the church, The teacher is the priest. Even if you go to a private school, that private school has to be accredited. And to get your accreditation, you have to teach the curriculum of the government. It's a little bit nicer and you've got less students and they're going to have a better kind of education, but they still have to teach to the government's textbook through tradition and textbook amalgamation. Everybody essentially learns the same thing. And what the teacher, the priest of the church, the school is teaching is that government is somewhat of a god. It's a supernatural entity that promises to make the world a better place if you only believe in it. And there's different religious rituals. You're going to learn about the holy documents of the Constitution. You're going to do the common prayer of the Pledge of Allegiance. You're going to sing the hymns of the national anthem and the Star Spangled Banner. And the here in the United States, the school system has in kind of middle school, they have either a free or a price-supported low-cost trip to Mecca, Washington, D.C., the holy land of government, where you will be taken into the cathedral of the Capitol. And if you've ever seen the United States Capitol, it looks like the Vatican for a reason. And everything will be large and oversized, so you feel small and insignificant. And you will be taken into the temples of Jefferson and Lincoln, and it's very hushed and it's very reverent. And people get subsumed into the religion of this government. They begin to pray to the government. Voting is kind of like a form of prayer. Here in the United States, we vote on unauditable black box voting machines and easily rigged mail-in ballots. So there's really there's very little hope that your prayer will be answered by the government. But you're now going to, what that system, that mandatory government school is going to produce a taxpayer that is willing to tithe. And so a cult member that's willing to semi-voluntarily give away a fairly significant portion of your income here in the United States, if you include both the overt taxes, the income tax, the covert taxes, and the inflation, it's over 50% of income here in the United States easily, especially with the inflation. And so, you're going to tie the portion of your income, and then, like I said, the government is running these unethically manipulative tricks, and so they're in partnership with the media, where the media is controlling the information that you receive coming out of Hollywood, and they're making the government the hero in all of the movies and the television shows. And one of the things that we expose is, the Pentagon has an office in Hollywood, and they've been behind over 1,000 movies and 1,000 television shows where they frequently have script control. If you see any American military equipment in the in a movie, or if it's shot on a military base, or if it includes the helicopters, the jets, or the whatever it is, then the Pentagon's already had complete script control of that movie, and they've gone through and they've in many cases rewritten history. So they've rewritten, we're going to take out the My Lai massacre in any movie of Vietnam, and we're going to make it about buddies fighting for buddies, and we're going to excise out anything that would make us look bad. And the director already knows that if he's not making the government the hero, in the movie, that they're not going to get the F-18s and the carriers and the ships and everything like that. And so the government is then using these unethically manipulative techniques where they're product placing the American flag at moments of high positive emotion. So the movie will build up to a moment of high positive emotion, and then they're going to anchor that to the flag. Anchoring is a marketing technique where they actually will build you into this moment of joy or exhilaration or whatever it is that the apex of the movie is traveling, and then they're going to show you the flag. And they're going to show you the flag, and they're going to do it over and over and over and over and over again, depending on how much television you watch. You might be getting thousands of this repetitions of the flag, and then that is tricking you into this belief system that you're in this artificial tribe, There's behavioral psychology behind people wanting to fit into the tribe. And if everywhere you see people are wearing American flags and there's American flags on everything, well, then you must be an American. And if you're not an American, then that would be psychologically disturbing to you because you're not with the group. And so a lot of this is ancient behavioral psychology being used to trick you into identifying as an American. Now it gets even worse because that's just the program that's run on the kind of the taxpayer. Then there's another program, a set of programs and unethically manipulative techniques that produce what is known as an order follower, someone in the police and the military who is willing to set their morality aside and use violence on peaceful people for the religion, for the cult, for the government. And so that program in the United States starts with a program called the Cub Scouts that goes to the Webelos, that turns into Boy Scouts, that turns into explorers. And then in the high school, we have a program called JROTC, Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps, where the kids' heads are shaved, they're militarized, they're put into the uniform. But it all begins in the Cub Scouts, where now the kids get awards. They get adventure loops and Boy Scout merit badges for regurgitating the doctrine of the state. So there's, you've got to get your merit badge, you've got to go and you've got to read, some literature on your duty as a citizen in the world and your duty as a subject of the United States. And then once you regurgitate that back, they give you the cookie. And so now they're instituting this reward system. They're getting people used to hierarchical command and control being used to, getting you used to taking orders from people that are your superiors. They're indoctrinating you into the love of the uniform. The uniform, the single form, so uniform means single form, it's an artificial group identity that replaces your individual identity. And that's the reason why the military and the police shave the heads, is that they're compacting the police and the military into these artificially created groups. And they're using kind of behavioral psychology to get them into a very unhealthy group dynamic, to where you're willing to use violence on your fellow man. Now in the military, that is, you're going to go to, then once they get you actually into the military, then they're going to turn up and they're going to run dozens of more techniques on you. So now you're going to be segmented away from the rest of the population. You're going to go to a military base where your communications with the rest of the world are going to be curtailed during a period called basic training. That you're going to be subject to sleep deprivation. You're going to be subject to peer pressure. You're going to be subjected to being worked, physically hard. They're going to control the information that you receive. The Marines take the doors off of, they take the doors and the walls off the toilet stalls, so you can never ever have a moment of silence or self-reflection to really understand, like, what is being done to you. You're going to be subjected to a wide variety of collective punishment. So if you're not willing to go along with the program, or you're out of line in any way, shape, or form, they may run what's called a blanket party on you. And a blanket party, if anybody's seen the movie A Full Metal Jacket, it's when they hold the guy down on the bunk and everybody in the platoon beats him because he's failing to conform, and they take a bar of soap, they wrap it in a towel, and they will beat the non-conforming as a form of collective punishment and peer pressure to get with the program and go along with what they're doing. If they really don't like you, they'll take a padlock and they'll put it in a sock and they'll beat you with a padlock. It happened to a friend of mine's son. I literally have I personally have talked to my friend's son, who that happened to. So I know it still goes on today. It's not just in the movies. And so, I could go on and on with all of the variety of techniques. But then now you've got somebody that is now will follow orders without question. If you want them to goose step, they'll goose step. If you want them to kill brown people in another country for a war based on lies and manufactured intelligence, they will go and they will kill, brown people in a country on a war based on lies and manufactured intelligence. And that is unethically manipulative and wrong and evil. In the case of the police, they will arrest people for victimless, something known as a victimless crime. A real crime by definition has a perpetrator and a victim. The government makes things that aren't really crimes: gambling, smoking a plant, paying for love with a woman. A variety of things that speeding ticket. And a variety of things that aren't really crimes. The government will make a crime, and then they will charge you tens of thousands of dollars here in the United States. And so in the case of like the accidentless DUI, they'll set an arbitrary limit, and if you have 0.08, you could be charged, $15,000, in court cost, fines, paying for, the programs to get your license back. And it's just, it's a form of extortion. I'm not advocating drinking and driving. I'm saying that it's not really a crime until the crime has actually been committed. And the government will take things that aren't crimes, and then they'll just use it, to extort you. And then that makes the police officers the real criminals, because they're the ones that are actually using violence on peaceful people that really haven't hurt anybody yet or done anything. And it's not really a crime to be playing poker in a poker game. It's not really a crime to be smoking a plant. But they will steal your liberty. They will steal your money. They will participate in something that's obviously unethical. And the way that you get them to do that, the way that you're doing, is the government is running techniques on them. And so that's why I call it a pimp game. A pimp is a person that uses unethically manipulative techniques on a woman to get them to turn over a percentage of their money and their income. The government is using unethically manipulative techniques on the population to get them to, turn over a portion of their income. And so that's why I refer to it as the pimp game.
Dude, mate, where do I even begin? The reason why I was laughing was because I know your wife's in the room because she was helping set you up. And you just said it's not a crime to pay for a woman to have sex with them or something.
Well, I mean, it's so funny. So, I've never ever been to a prostitute or anything like that, but like,
yeah, you would say that.
It should be illegal. It should not be illegal. Like the idea that it's legal to send, 18-year-olds across the ocean and have them murder people, but it's illegal if they wanted to pay a woman to spend the night with them. It's just, it's craziness. It's,
yeah.
My fiance just popped in and she said, "There's lonely people in the world."
I love it. I love it. I love it. It's all good. It's all great. Listen, fantastic. I hope you're not going to get married like through the government. I hope you're going to have a natural marriage, like hand tying. Because
we are, yeah, absolutely. We don't see any need to involve organized crime in our business in any way, shape, or form.
Good. All right, listen, there's so much shit to talk about. I don't even know where to begin. But there's a page that I just love. I'm going to reiterate and summarize why the religion of statism is a religion. And you went through it, but I'm going to go very quickly. So you got the sacred symbols and text, the flag, the constitution. You got the common prayer where you swear your oath to the allegiance to the flag. You got your temples and monuments. You got that really weird obelisk in DC, and like you said, Capitol Hill, and the Abraham Lincoln Memorial and all that kind of stuff. You got the deities. You got the church leadership, in Congress. You got the Pope, Trump. You got the churches, which are the schools. You got the crusades, where people go away and die. You got your mystical rituals, where people are signing documents and, blah, blah, blah. And then you got your human sacrifice. We love a bit of human sacrifice. More human sacrifice. Yes. And then you got the worship and adulation. And, you got this all in those big, massive conferences and meetings and everybody cheering on their your president or prime minister. So I mean, it sounds pretty much like a religion to me. And you also talked about cults, and it's funny. I was raised in a cult, right? A Muslim cult, and in our cult, we also had like the Boy Scout type thing. We had Atfal, which was, up until the age of 9 or 10 or something. And then you were Khuddam, which was like from 10 to 16. And then you became Ansar, or something like that. I might botch this all up. But what I'm saying is every age group, you were part of a separate organization within the cult. And you attended school, Sunday school, and you're indoctrinated with the hierarchy and the obedience and the, worship, and make you a good little, Ahmadi Muslim, person, so that you don't ever disobey. And one of the things they kept drumming in was, you cannot question authority, because at the top you've got the Hazur, the Caliph, and he is divinely ordained, and below him he has his lieutenants. Again, he's appointed them, so whatever they say is coming from the Caliph, and if it's coming from the Caliph, it's coming from God. And it would trickle down, and you had all these little people, and down to your and down to your local mosque in your own town or city, and whatever that the president of the Jamaat, it was actually literally called president, and that was not the same as the religious minister. It was that it was divided between the organizational structure and the religious. You were basically brought up to obey the authorities. Like, you couldn't question, and if you questioned, guess what? You got the groupthink, and you had the other cult members inflict punishment on you, and then ostracize you, and then cut you out, and blah blah. It was just insane. So when you talked about cult, trust me, I know all about cults, and I think government is a cult, and everyone following it, whether they know it or not, is a cult member. And the thing is, when you're in a cult, you don't know it. No one who's in a cult will say, I'm a cult member. It just no one ever does that. But anyway, I also want to point out, folks, if you've been feeling a bit disconnected lately, then this is for you. It's time to reconnect. Over the past few weeks, I've been talking about what I believe is the real pandemic. The pandemic of disconnection and loneliness. Not just physical, but emotional, psychological, and spiritual. So many of you have reached out to me saying that you feel it too. Surrounded by people, yet somehow still feeling alone. Wanting deeper conversations, more honesty, and real connection with people who understand you. And the truth is, many of us are searching for spaces where we can just be ourselves again, when we can speak openly, laugh freely, and not feel like we're walking on eggshells. That's why Kasia and I have created the Connection Retreat. After the success of the retreats I ran in 2025, I knew I wanted to go deeper, to create something that is not just a weekend away, but a genuine experience of reconnection. Connection to yourself, connection to others, connection to nature, connection to truth. This is a space where you can slow down, put your phone away, breathe, and just be. No masks, no performance, no pretending. Just real people, real conversations, real connection, and real food. And over 3 days, we're going to share these beautiful meals, movement, nature, conversation, play, fire circles, and simply spend together as human beings again. And at the very beginning of this journey, Kasia and I made a pinky promise to each other to do this with integrity, honesty, and heart, and to create something truly meaningful for everyone who joins us. If you've been feeling a bit disconnected lately, or you are simply craving good company, real conversations, and a chance to switch off and enjoy yourself, then this is for you. If you've been searching for your people, your tribe, people who you can just be yourself around, then you will feel right at home here. Or maybe you simply want a weekend away to relax, to have fun, meet great people, and forge new friendships for life, and spend some proper time together. This is exactly what we have created. So we're going to be running 2 retreats this year, from the 26th to the 28th of June, and from the 4th to the 6th of September. About a third of the places for the June retreat have already gone, and that was the early release to my paid subscribers. Remember, both are small and intimate, so spaces are limited. If you feel the call, we would love to welcome you. You can find the full details and book your place by visiting my website, Doc Malik, and at the top bar you'll see events. Click on events and you'll find all the details for both the June and September retreats. Sometimes the most important thing we can do is simply come back to ourselves and to each other. Folks, if you do book, I look forward to seeing you. Thanks. The
By the
propagandists.
way, I want to agree with everything you just said, and it's funny because what I refer to what we're doing is large scale cult indoctrination.
Yeah.
And so that, like, if the problem is that, you've got so if you've got an intergenerational organized crime system that is running a variety of unethically manipulative techniques on the population to produce cult members who will, semi-voluntarily tithe half their income, the solution has to be large scale cult deprogramming. There's no there's no way to sugarcoat it. There's no way to, it is the stone cold hard truth about, what we're trying to do. And so, the way that I design the books, most people are visual learners. And so, like, how do you get somebody out of a cult? They have to be able to see it themselves. And so, because, what I'm doing in the books is I'm leveraging a lot of techniques about how people learn so that I can shortcut somebody into looking at the world in a way that they never would have looked at. And you just, as you can't pick up the book and not flip through it and not look at it. And so, one of the things that we say at the Art of Liberty Foundation is, number one, once you see it, you can never unsee it. And so, you can once you realize that this is going on, and, and I'm doing a lot of things about, revealing the pattern that they're, making the president the Pope, and they're using religious symbolism, and a lot of people don't realize that's one of the techniques in the book, to see the cages, to leave it, is that they're photographing the president with the presidential seal behind him as a halo. And, you don't notice it if they come by one at a time. But if somebody, there you go, if somebody stacks a dozen or 2 dozen or 3 dozen examples right there, the human brain goes, hey, wait a minute, that's artificial. They're doing that on purpose. I've never noticed that because they've been coming by one at a time. But all of a sudden, your brain, which is magnificent at pattern recognition, the brain is a pattern recognition machine, looks at that and goes, that's a pattern. That's artificial. They're doing that on purpose.
Guess
and
how many?
It's like,
Guess how many repetitions you need to program someone?
From 2 to 5.
As little as 2. So yeah. I had Jason Christoff on my show. I mean, you should definitely speak to him, right? He's all about mind.
We're friends, and my fiance and I just literally watched Planet.
Mind Control
the other night, and I immediately contacted Jason and complimented him on his work and asked to syndicate it. And so he's interviewed me a variety of times, and we're both on the exact same page.
Absolutely, I love freaking Jason, and that movie is amazing. And like you just said, these halo things around the politicians, like some people might be like, oh, well, that's just coincidence, and you just calm down. You're just seeing something in there. No. Everything you see on television is, like you said, and like many other people, television. You are selling something, and it's a TV program. You are being programmed, and they're subliminal. They can just be in the background, and your brain will be soaking it up. Your subconscious brain will be soaking it up, and then you're like, oh, we love government. I love government. Please piss on me. Oh, look, there's rain. I love it. You're pissing on me. I love you so much. More, please. And I've come to this conclusion. I did a tweet on this and I put it on my Substack. I've come to the bitter conclusion that most of fracking humanity is on its knees, prostrating, not to Mecca, prostrating to the government, saying, please shit on me. Please piss on me. I love you so much. Whip me, enslave me. Thank you, please. Thank you, master. And it's like, you look down at your fellow man and you go, get up, man. Yeah. What the hell are you doing to yourself? And instead of saying, oh yeah, right, thanks, and taking your hand, they try to pull you down. They're like, shut up, get down here with me. Get down here with me and eat the shit and the piss. And it's like, oh, that's the problem. That, people like you and I, maybe they'll be writing about us, by the way, in a few hundred years' time. Maybe someone will be a pen name Doc Malik squared 2. I mean, I don't know. But like I love this guy, Doc Malik. He was around 600 years ago. And 600 years ago, he had all these guests on and he created this library of freedom and talked about all of this stuff. And now I am going to be Doc Malik too. And who knows? Who knows? But listen, our job is not easy. Like this guy, Etienne, laid it out like literally hundreds of years ago. And it just like fell on deaf ears. Right. And I just feel like the game is stacked against us. Not only does the enemy have power, influence, exposure, media, the algorithms, everything promoting them, but they've also got, sadly, humanity's psychology, which in a simple way is dumb, stupid. Like they just want to be led. They want to be sheep. And if you want to be sheep, you get treated like sheep. You get slaughtered. Yep. And unfortunately, in humanity, in the human race, species, there are very few people like us who are independent, free thinkers, and we are not sheep. We're not the farmer. We're not going to cull sheep. We're not into that. We're not into child sacrifice and pedophilia. I mean, we're not into that kind of stuff. But like, we just want to be left alone. We don't want to be treated badly, and we don't want to treat anyone else badly. But we make up. The hardware, the makeup of humanity is that we represent a very small group. And I think that the lot of humanity will not improve until we get bigger and more human beings think like us. Until then, like, we're in a mess. We're in a shit show because we can lay it out to them. We can explain everything to them. And they're still going to be like, no, get down here right now and prostrate and in front of tyranny and beg for it. It's hard, dude.
So I'm going to both agree with you, and then I'm going to give you some good news, or what I think is the good news. And so you're absolutely right. And the history of humanity is one of slavery, and most people have been in the history of the planet is most people. The overwhelming majority of the population has lived in slavery, whether that slavery was overt or whether that slavery was hidden and wrapped in this pseudo religion of statism and government and monarchy and things like that for thousands and thousands of years. And the average person is up against $1 trillion system of mind control.
Yeah.
The weapon is control of perception, and most people do not until you understand that the information is being controlled to you, whether that's the mandatory government school, whether that's what you're learning in the Cub Scouts, the Boy Scouts, the Weeblos, the JROTC, the ROTC, the police and military training, whether that's what's coming across the monopolized media, or whether that's the algorithmic censorship of the internet. Until you understand that that's going on, you're not even in the game. You're not even on the field. But the one thing that I think is fairly positive is, and we at the Art of Liberty Foundation, we call it the one-way revolution, is that once you do wake somebody up, and once you can, and by the way, the movie The Matrix is an analogy of how hard it is to wake up one single person out of the Matrix. How hard it, just think about all of the effort that went into just freeing Neo.
I know. I know.
And so it's very, very, very hard. But once that person is free, that only goes, they're not going back to the Matrix. They're not going, nobody goes, oh man, government was, wow, they ran game on me. They tricked me. I've got a variety of friends that used to be in the military. They ain't going back to the military, and they're ticked about, they now understand how they were tricked, how the system tricked them, how the information was controlled to them. And they're raising their kids to be free and sovereign individuals, and they're not going to, their kids aren't going to go into the military. And so we call that at the Art of Liberty Foundation, we call that the one-way revolution. And it's only going in one direction, and it's only picking up steam, and it's only going faster and faster, and there's no way to stop it in the information age. I mean, you can shadow ban it, and you can try and steer it, and you can censor it, and you can do things, but it's getting around one at a time. And once somebody understands the way the system it works, for the most part, they're out. Now, The caveat to that is it's a lot harder if you're getting a paycheck. And that was one of the points that you made, is that the government has engineered a dependency on the government where there are millions and millions and millions of people who are financially dependent either for their retirement or for their pension or for their paycheck or whatever. And it's a lot harder. Upton Sinclair said it's hard to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding it. And it
Absolutely.
is and it is really hard to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding it. And so a lot of people, they're trapped financially, they're trapped psychologically, they're trapped, they don't want to go against what they perceive to be the rest of tribe and the rest of humanity. And it is the rare human being that has the ability to stand up and say, no, this is wrong, this is immoral, this is illogical, they're running game on us. But more and more people are standing up, and that revolution's only going in one direction. And I believe it is capable and destined for exponential growth. And so the other thing that we're trying to do with the Art of Liberty Foundation is, how do you get that exponential growth? And so we're selling books in 25 plus countries. We just translated it into both. We translated the To See the Cages, to Leave It, into both Latin American Spanish and Castilian Spanish. We have little flash drives where people can copy like all the information. You can have it in your wallet. It fits into your wallet. You can be at a friend's house and they can download it all on their computer, and then they can make flash drives for their friends and their families and colleagues. And we authorize that, and we do it, and we encourage it. And so there's been, we've sold somewhere around 9,000 books to 25 countries, but we've had over probably now 35,000 to 40,000 plus downloads, and that's accelerating. It's only going in, like I said, it's only going in one direction. And so we're in it to win the whole thing. I think we can do it. I think we need to free, one particular place, and we have to have a laboratory of liberty, and we've got to prove to the world that you don't really need government.
Okay.
I think that's one of the things, but I think that's that once that happens, you're going to see this spread like wildfire through the rest of the world.
Well, I love your enthusiasm. That's fantastic. Love the optimism. Right, we're going to come to that in a second about government and not having a government and some of the critiques that people give when I talk about that. But let's talk about this intergenerational organized crime system. Who are they? Who are they?
It's the banks. Surprise! It's the money changers, our ancient enemies. Christ fought against the government and the money changers, and it is the banks. And so really, the banks use government. So government is a creature of the banks. The government should be thought of as a technique for robbing and controlling society. The banks are using government to rob and control society, and the linchpin, the main technique that they're using is that government allows them to engage in something called fractional reserve banking, where they're forcing population to use their money that they can create out of thin air. So when you go to a bank to get a loan, a mortgage, a car loan, a consumer loan, when you use your credit card, they're not loaning you another depositor's money. They just tickle the ivories on the keyboard, and they credit your account with digital dollars that they created out of nothing. And then you spend the rest of your life paying back a mortgage that they created out of thin air. And that makes them fabulous profits, but they're not really profits, because that system is inflationary, and that monetary system is dishonest, and it's stealing the value out of everybody else's money. And when I say that, one of the analogies that I use a lot is, if I have $1 and you, dear listener or dear viewer, have $1, and we have the only $2 on the planet. I own 50% of the world's wealth, and you, dear listener or viewer, own 50% of the world's wealth. And a bank or a government comes along and creates $2 more. either through fractional reserve banking or through quantitative easing or digital dollar creation or a printing press or whatever it is. Now, all of a sudden, you've been reduced to owning 25% of the world's wealth from 50. I've been reduced to owning 25% of the world's wealth from 50, and the bank has stolen 50% of the world's wealth. And so that's the main scam. Now, that system is stealing the value out of everybody's money the same way as if the government stuck its hand in your pocket and stole your money. But they're doing it in a way that is very sophisticated, that most people don't understand. And the mandatory government school and the monopoly media isn't going to tell you about. And that's really the name of the game. And so the subtitle of Government, the Biggest Scam in History, is how intergenerational organized crime runs the government, the media, and academia. And so what they're doing is they're controlling the information that society receives to trick them into this monetary system that allows them to steal the value. Now, if it wasn't for this dishonest monetary system, the dollars or the pounds or the euro or the yen or the Deutschmarks or whatever it is, they should be buying more and more every single year. So prices should be deflationary because innovations and productivity improvements are happening all of the time, and they're reducing the cost of producing and distributing the luxuries and the necessities of life. And so every single day, people, there's innovators in the free market and there's entrepreneurs that are figuring out how to get the cost out of either, making, the computer cheaper or making the car cheaper or whatever it is. But because the value of the dollar is being stolen out of, prices, instead of going down where you would be wealthier and wealthier and wealthier, the banks are effectively stealing the value out of your dollars. And so now everything costs more and more and more. And there's all kinds of economic misallocation where money is going into assets like homes and pricing people out of homes. And, because it's a hedge against the inflation of what the system is doing. And so there's all of these negative economic misallocations caused by the system. Businesses don't invest as much as they would if they had more faith that the dollar that they invest today, they would get back in the same amount in 10 years, 20 years, 50 years time. So there's less economic activity. Wages are going down, so people don't have as much disposable income, which limits the dynamic nature of the economy, because people can't, there would be more firms if there was more disposable income. And so the system is really, really, rigged against the average person in a way that they don't really understand. But what the banks are doing to hide and obfuscate this is they've monopolized the media, they've monopolized the government, they've monopolized academia, and that they're making sure that those institutions aren't going to tell you what's really going on.
Right, I'm going to come back to the banks and the problem. I have a major problem with the banking world. I really have a problem with the whole financialization of the world, basically. Yep. Now we're seeing that in tokenization and all these kinds of stuff. But, the problem with financialization is, it's that this dominance of the finance markets, of the fact that modern economies have shifted from actually making and producing things, but it's all about financial engineering. And it's like it profits those at the top, the insiders, and financial motives, financial instruments. I freaking hate that. And instead of these profits coming from goods and services, it's all about trading assets, managing debt, and basically creating financial products and playing on the gambling, the house, it's gambling, really. So you've got these things like derivatives, you've got future contracts, you've got shorts, credit default swaps. I mean, all this crap, short selling, high frequency trading, it goes on and on, private equity. And it's all about basically the insiders. They know which way the market's going. They know when things, because they buy the politicians, they can influence when interest rates are going to go up or down, when there's going to be a war or not. And so they always come up top. And I freaking hate that. But let's go back to the bankers. So if you look at the bankers, right? There's banking families, and I know there's some Italian ones, but it's the Rothschilds.
Yeah.
You've got the Rockefellers, you've got the Morgan family, you've got Warburg, you've got the Lazards. A lot of people would say there's a lot of Jewish families at the top that control the banking world, and this comes to another thing. People are like, what's going on here? Because they're the people you can't question. You can't talk about Zionism. You can't criticize them. You can't talk about their unhealthy representation in all aspects of power, whether it's the media, the Hollywood, the banking. I mean, whether it's Biden or Trump, like more than half the people in their cabinets, whether it's Democratic or Republican, are dual national Israelis. They're Zionists. I mean, they're not even religious Jews. Like, a lot of them are atheists. Like, I don't think Netanyahu is particularly religious. These people tend to be European Jews, converts. They're not genetically Semite. They're not genetically from Palestine. But like, they have so much power, and the Epstein files have come out, and they're all over it. And Epstein, from his correspondence, you can see he's clearly a Jewish supremacist. They talk about the goy. They talk about taking advantage of the goy. They say, "Oh, is this only a Jewish only party?" And it's like, no, there's some wasps, but they're bright people. Like, we use them to make money out of other people, and they even say that, like, we use them for them to work, and we profit from them. There's a degree of Jewish supremacy going on, and that's saying, if you want to know who rules you, it's those you can't criticize. What is going on there? But I'm saying this because of your very interesting background. Now, I'm not saying it's all Jewish people. I'm not. I'm just saying there's some people who are either Jewish or are using the religion or ethnicity or whatever, but they seem to be behind a lot of the bad shit that's going on. And we can even take COVID, for example. If you look at your Federal Reserves, I mean, look at all the names there. Look at all the people who are behind it all. Like, what's that all about?
Well, so my background is I was adopted into a Jewish family at 6 days old. I was raised Jewish. I was bar mitzvahed, and so I get a pass. I'm not I can't be accused of being anti-Semitic because I love my family. I love the Jewish people. I'm not the least bit anti-Semitic, and it's not the Jews. It's Jewish organized crime centered around banking and central banking and the monopolization of the media. And I do think it goes back to the Rothschilds, who essentially invented central banking and invented international, banking, and began really the first to, large scale fund, political machines and begin to manipulate, gilt offerings and treasuries and financial markets. Going back to the famous example of the Battle of Waterloo, everything that system represents. They install it's organized crime, many of which is not Jewish, but primarily Jewish, that is hiding within the Jewish people and is installing Jews for the same reason that the Italian mafia is primarily Catholic and primarily made up of leveraging the community and the familial relationships, because they know that this guy is going to be trusted to run this media monopoly, or this going to be trusted to run this, and then they're kept compacted in that group dynamic where they don't want to go, like, so now you're involved in organized crime, you're running a movie studio or a television studio or whatever, you're censoring information that goes to the public, you've got your lieutenants and your capos and your executives under you that's going through this, and you're compacted into that group identity where you don't want to be ostracized from the group. You don't want to make it you don't want to point out that it's a Jewish thing. You don't want to point out. And so that's the group dynamic that many of them are in. But it's not, but 95% of the Jewish people have nothing to do with central banking, have nothing to do with the monopolization of media, have nothing to do with Talpiot programs in Israel that, buy up communications, systems and firewall technology and, so that they can spy on and blackmail politicians in other parts of the world. They have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein running what in the United States is known as brownstone operation. where we're going to, get somebody involved in pedophilia, or we're going to get them involved in some kind of, sexual, predation that we're going to film and use as blackmail material. And so there is an aspect of Jewish supremacy to it, the same way that a very small amount of people in the, in the white population are white supremacists. I'm sure in the Muslim population, there's Muslim supremacists, but there's a very few percentage. But these are the people that they're putting into these powers. They're developing that as a system of controlling the people within the organized crime system.
Okay, so let me ask you. So that's a great summary. So before the Second World War, most European Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, European, genetically European, did not want to go to Madagascar or Argentina or Palestine. They wanted to be integrated into Europe. They wanted to go to Parisian cafes. Correct. They wanted to go to the Viennese opera. They wanted to be part of England, whatever. Like, they wanted, like, it's like me, right? My parents came over from the Indian subcontinent 60, 70 years ago, right? I was born in Scotland. If someone said to me, the only safe place for you, dude, is India. You need to go to India. I'd be like, no, thanks. I'm quite happy being here. Thank you very much. I can't read or write the language. I'm culturally, British. No thanks. So most Jews were anti-Zionist. But, it's funny that Second World War, much of the history is, debatable as far as I'm concerned. It changed the views of most Jews. Now, what I'm trying to say is, growing up in a Jewish family and everything, were you brought up being told you're the chosen people, you're better? Did you hear the word goy? Like I believe that goy lives matter, right? Like, this term goy and goyim. I mean, it's in Jeffrey Epstein's email. I mean, it's like high up there. He's talking about us, as if like we're like cattle. Is there that unfortunate attitude now amongst Jewish people that, you guys are better than us, and that we are goy? Because I'm not saying Jews have always believed in this, but just like Zionism now affects 95% of Jews, when it was the opposite only 100 years ago, has the programming from above by these criminal syndicates now infected most decent Jewish people into thinking, yes, we're more superior and we're better and blah, blah, blah?
No, I don't believe that. So there's kind of three flavors of Judaism. There is Orthodox, which does believe in the Talmud and studies the Talmud and probably has the highest concentration of kind of Jewish supremacy within it. And that makes up about 10% of the Jewish population. If that might be, kind of like a high number. And then the Jewish population in the United States is like 2 point something percent. So very, tiny amount of people. There's about 40% that are what's known as conservative, and they probably keep kosher. Some may study the Talmud. There's probably, a little bit of Jewish supremacy in there. There's pride of Jewish accomplishment and things like that, but there's not, there's not kind of overt, racism, as much overt racism as you might find among the Orthodox. And then there's kind of what are known as Reform Jews, which are, or kind of unreligious whatsoever, which make up the overwhelming amount of Jews here in the United States. And they're not that religious at all. They may go to this, services on the high holy days. They may, they kind of, they're kind of lightly religious. They're not reading the Talmud. There's not there's not very much, Jewish supremacy in there. I have seen it. I have overheard it. I'm not denying that it exists, but I don't believe that it's as widespread as many people believe. And I think at the end of the day, I think, to your point about Israel, about them forcing Jews into Israel. Well, actually, is there anything else you wanted to know about that? That's my thing. And then, because I do want to talk about, what I think's going on with Israel, but I don't want to cut off that conversation too soon.
No, I want. Yeah, I mean, you're really like helping, like put a window into this. Like the other thing they always, I've read.
Oh, by the way, and so on the chosen people, I was taught that Jews were chosen to spread the word of God, and that's what the chosen people meant. Not that we were chosen with God's favor, or that we're supposed to reign over the goy or anything like that. I was all like when I was brought up and I went to a fairly reform conservative temple. It was we were chosen to spread the word of God, and so that's what the chosen people meant. That's what I was taught. There was no ethnic superiority in the term as I learned it in my Hebrew school.
Okay, well, I can understand, because growing up in my Muslim cult, we were told that we were special. We were special because we believed in the second coming of Jesus, and that gave us a special, understanding and awareness. And it was our job to spread that message to all the other people who didn't know, that we had this special knowledge and this special mission to spread the message of God, right? That was kind of thing. And a lot of people in the Ahmadiyya community are actually very nice people, very decent people. But the people at the top, I mean, they were in the Panama Papers. There's a lot of sexual scandals going on, raping of relatives and this and that, taking money from all the, because you're made to donate, but it's like you're levied a tax. You're meant to give a certain percentage of your income. It's quite high. It's like 10-15%, like as well as paying all your other taxes. By the time you pay, and there's all these tiny little taxes, chanda, vasia, there's all these little taxes. You tally them all up, it's like 10-15% of your gross income. So you're giving all your money to the top, the leadership, who you can't question. Remember, you can't question because they're from God. And they're taking all that money and they're living the life. They've got homes abroad, and they've got beautiful cars. They've got money locked away in the Panama accounts. So what I'm trying to say is I can understand that the leadership and the people at the top can be complete crooks, and the vast majority of the cult members are just ignorant fools. Like they're just being duped and used. But I just worry that a lot of Jewish people now have been bought into the lies that, there's no genocide. Do you believe in Hamas? And, and like they believe in October 7th. They don't see the 9/11 similarity. They don't see actually how anti-Semitic Zionism is. They can't see how Zionism will literally throw Jews under the bus, and have done. For example, just after the creation of Israel, they sent a terrorist into like Iraq and everything, and they started bombing their own like synagogues, and then would say, "Oh, see, everybody hates you. You need to come to Israel." And there was I forgot the guy's name, but he talked about it. He went from like Morocco and Tunisia and Iraq, where like they literally bombed their own Jewish people and killed them. Like they wouldn't care, like as long as it meant that they all came flooding back to Israel. Like they're happy to throw their own people under the bus if it means that they get what they want. That's the kind of people these people are. They're crooks, right? And there's nothing godly about them. But I feel like a lot of like Jewish people now have been caught into this lie, like just like doctors, most of them well-intentioned, going to medical school, think that they're going to be healing people, but now they're bought into this system where they're just serving big pharma. They will never question, and they will blindly vaccinate people without informed consent. And in that respect, there's nothing exceptional about Jewish people. I feel like just like doctors have been captured, I think a lot of Jewish people have now been captured ideologically, and they've been brainwashed. And especially in Israel, trauma-based mind control into believing that everyone hates them, that they need to be the one holding the stick, and that they're the honorable, decent people, and everyone else, like, they need to be defeated and killed and ruled over. And I feel like the Jewish people just stick together and look after each other and help each other out. And there's an issue there. There's a problem there. And I think I've come across it, you see. I was cancelled ultimately by 2 Jewish doctors who reported me to my private hospital and said, he had a guest on his show and he's anti-Semitic. And it was just final nail in the coffin of my career. And like, I was very disappointed with them. very disappointed. And I think that there's a problem there. And the thing is, medicine, for example, will never fix itself unless doctors put their hands up and say, we have a problem here. We are not a healthcare system. We are a sick care system. We are pimps for big pharma, and we need to change things. Unless doctors do that, medicine isn't going to get better. And I feel the same is with Jewish people. Jewish people need to say, enough of them say, look, not in our name. Like, we don't like genocide. We don't like apartheid. We just want one country where everybody lives happily, regardless of their religion. We want a small state, minimal government, no nothing, decentralization. And you know what? We want enough of this. We want enough of the foreign interference and the wars and the buying the social medias and the banking and the fiat money and whatever, and the security apparatus that is now everywhere, Mossad, MI6, CIA. It's all one big blob. We're going to stop serving the Rothschilds. I mean, Epstein even said, you know, I'm an agent for the Rothschilds or something like that. And even what's his name, Les Wexner, in front of the state committee, you know, said live, you know, when he was asked, why did you deal with Epstein? He said, well, he had good credentials, and I spoke to Elie de Rothschild, and she said he manages all our financial things for the family. And then Les Wexner's solicitor, lawyer, leaned over on a hot mic and said, shut the fuck up if you say it. Yeah. It's like, you know, we've got an issue here. And I just feel like good Jewish people need to speak up and say no. But I know some Jewish people, and they've said to me, the reason we don't is because we get benefits. Because being Jewish means you're part of a club and network. And because that club and network is highly influential and rich and powerful, we benefit from it. And if we speak out, we're going to get cut off. And then we don't want that. And that's exactly the same as, for example, two doctors that I met at a wedding. And they came up to me and said, oh, by the way, we love what you're doing. I went, that's great. And they said, we agree with everything you said. I went, that's great. I said, what are you guys doing? And they went, well, they looked at their feet, they were like pacing. And both of them said, well, you know, we've got mortgages and we've got a young family, and, you know, we can't afford to say anything. And I was like, guys, I've got a mortgage. I've got a young family. You think I can afford to like speak up? Like, you know, what I'm trying to say is there's too many people who are staying within the system and playing along because they benefit from it. Like you said, you're not going to question the system when your salary depends on you not questioning.
Right. And there is a huge aspect of that in the Jewish community. But there's also, you know, I was on a Israeli talk show, The Last Pillar with Harry Kaufman. And, you know, he's spreading, you know, he's a voluntarist in Israel, and he's doing the great work, and he's reaching Israeli audiences. And one of the things that we discussed on that program, and I think it's very, very interesting, is that Israel is running the exact same techniques that I outline in Government, the Biggest Scam in History, or See the Cages to Leave It, on their population as we're running on our population. You know, they forced the COVID shot on their population the same way that our population, you know, forced it on us. And so I really, you know, don't think it's, you know, it's us against the Israelis, or us against the Russians, or us against the Chinese. It's the people against the governments of each of these various countries. And that's the message that we've got to get to the people, that we have to unite again. You know, we've got to expose the way the magician does the trick. We got to get them out of the cult mentality, and we got to get them focused in the right direction. You know, some of my strongest allies in the freedom movement are Jewish, or have Jewish, you know, lineage to them. I would recommend, if you haven't had Grant Presence Elman on, you know, he's you know, one of the leading freedom, truth oriented artists here in the United States. And he's got the hardest hitting, you know, one of the hardest hitting songs against the genocide going on in Gaza right now. And so like there, you know, there, it's not that it's like the Jewish community isn't, you know, it isn't monolithic. A lot of it's starting to fall away, and people are saying, hey, not in my name. I don't support that. I'm not for killing Palestinians. I'm not for Israel at all. I don't support, you know, the idea of having a government at all, much less one, you know, built around an ethno state. running apartheid on the rest of the population. I'm definitely not for that. And I think more and more people are finding courage to say that.
Well, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. And I want to show you something. You mentioned this earlier, and I think this is really relevant. 1,000 movies or something you said. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm going to use this word, but Michael Bay is a propagandist.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, this guy is a propagandist. You just need to look at this guy's movies and Michael Benjamin Bay, early life. Where is he? Oh, yeah, he was raised Jewish. You'll see this all transform media, Hollywood, actors, directors. This is what I mean. Like, there's a lot of concentration Jewish people, and it's like, guys, like if I was Jewish, I'd be like, man, what is it with my people? Why are we up to all of this stuff? But anyway, look at the movie, right? Transformers, all these my son loves Transformers, and I hate it because I see what you're talking about, the American flag, the statism, and he's
Did
young.
you click on the video in the book? Did you
Not
click
yet.
on the?
Not
Okay,
yet.
so for your audience, so in the book, there is it's multimedia, and if you're in the EPUB version, you can click on it, and a video will pop. If you're in the print book, you can scan a QR code, and it'll come up on your phone. And one of the videos that we have shows every Michael Bay American flag in 12 different movies. And so Michael Bay has secretly, unethically, product placed the American flag a staggering 469 times in just 12 movies. And so we have a short little 8-minute video that just takes a couple of seconds that the flag is on the screen, and sometimes there's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 flags on the screen, and so there'll be little arrows, and it'll go ding, ding, ding as it scrolls through all of the placements in these 12 movies, and it's just sitting there going ding, 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 and you're just sitting there going, I never noticed that, because they're in the background. It's made to be woven in. But then once you see that, again, this is my point, the one-way revolution. Once you see it, you can never unsee it. Once you realize that that's being done to you, that fact that they're running this game is going to sit in your mind, and you're going to now notice it all the time. And now, like, once you realize that's going on, my fiance drives her crazy, because we'll be watching a movie, and I'll just go ding, and it drives her nuts, because every time the flag comes on, I'll say ding, jokingly, and so, like, once you see it and understand it, then that the trick loses a lot of its power, and then you're kind of ticked, you're kind of mad, you're like,
yeah,
I can't, like, man, do they think I'm stupid? They're playing me for a chump, man. Like, then you get angry about it. And now not only does the trick not work, but it has the complete opposite effect.
Absolutely. And he did a lot of really big movies like Transformers, Armageddon, Bad Boys, The Island, Bad Boys 2, Pearl Harbor, The Rock. Yeah, I mean, these are huge movies, right? Purge. And I think I want to talk about Purge for a second, because again, this guy's a propagandist. So the whole Purge series is to look, it's even called the Purge Anarchy. I mean, like, the whole point of the Purge movies is to trying to tell the audience, the people, the public, that anarchy is lawlessness. Anarchy is death and murder in the streets. Like, it's just the worst thing ever. You want rule and order. You want the government. And he's not only playing this, the military is amazing, the government is amazing. He's also, his agenda is to say anarchy is terrible. Anarchy is the last thing you ever want. Are you a crazy person? You want anarchy? So, this guy really is doing quite the number. And you know what? He must have had a tap on his shoulder. And they said, look, you're a nice Jewish boy. You know what? You're going to do this for us, and you're going to be incredibly wealthy, but this is the deal. And the problem is, these people are taking the deal. And what I'm trying to say is, I just wish, because like I said, I've looked at it now. It's undeniable. You can call me anti-Semitic. I'm not. There's an healthy proportion of Jewish people at the top of a lot of bad things that are going on right now in the world. And
so it's Jewish organized crime on the top. They're stealing the value out of everybody's money, and then they've bought up and they've monopolized the media, and they have installed capos and lieutenants in these media companies to make sure that not only you never hear about what's really going on with the banking system, but you're distracted and you're deceived about a great many things, including anarchy. And so the word anarchy just means no rulers. It doesn't mean no rules. It doesn't mean chaos and dystopia. One of the things I do in Government, the Biggest Scam in History, is I actually show how the Safra banking family bought the dictionary and the encyclopedia, and then they changed the definition of anarchy from no rulers to chaos and dystopia over time by comparing the 1827 definition of anarchy from the Webster's dictionary with the modern definition of anarchy from the Merriam-Webster dictionary, and show how that was changed. And then I break down how the Safra banking family installed a former Leslie Gelb, the former past president of the Council on Foreign Relations, on the editorial advisory board of both the dictionary and the encyclopedia. And so the most powerful weapon in the world is control of perception. And if you can control the words that people use, to a degree, you can control the people that have to use the words. And so they're tricking you about without government, even for a day. In the movie the Purge series, if government went offline for a day, a single day, it would be murder in the streets and chaos and dystopia. And that's the propagandist trick. That's how they're controlling the information that society receives. That's one of the tools that they're using, is they're making the thing that would actually free society, where you would have much more, without government, you would have much more prosperity.
Absolutely. Dude,
you have much more harmony in society without government, and they're making people afraid of it using their monopoly media system run by their capos and their lieutenants, who they've installed for the same, they've installed, Jews for the same reason that the mafia installs Catholics, overwhelmingly, white Italian Catholics. The Jews are installing overwhelmingly, white Jews, that where they have this cultural network that builds the protection that they're not going to say anything. They're not going to talk about.
And guess what?
Organized crime.
And guess what? It works. Just a reminder that I do have an affiliates page on my website, docmalik.com. I've got several products from hunter-gatherer foods, olive oil, MCT oil, supplements, liver supplements, collagen peptides, mayonnaise, ketchup. I've got the Heracles Sauna and Wellness Company, Sea Greens, whole wheat seaweed nutrition, a biocompatible iodine, which is really important for maintaining energy, thyroid health, and overall well-being. Nudum Skincare, Green Sense Organic Laundry Liquid, and each one has a code that you can get at least 10% discount on. So please visit docmalik.com/affiliates, and you can access those discounts for these wonderful products. And that's another way of supporting the show. Please, if you haven't already, leave a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. I'd really appreciate it. It helps with the algorithms. And if you're not a paid subscriber, please, can you share my content with friends and family, post it on your social medias? That does help as well. And if you're called to it, I'd love you to become a paid subscriber. It's only £6 a month, and there are extra bonuses and benefits to that. Right, folks, back to the show.
It works. 100% it works.
Because what happens is they'll choose Team Judaism, Team Jew, Team Zionism over Team Humanity. And that's the problem. And like I said, there's nothing exceptional about them. The mafia is the same. The medical profession is the same. out of 300,000 doctors in the UK, how many spoke out? Like normally, there's a joke. How many orthopedic surgeons does it take to change a light bulb? And is it just as many orthopedic surgeons that are present? Because everyone's got their own idea about how to do it. But all these doctors are independent, free thinking. It's like herding cats. But suddenly COVID comes along. We're all singing from the same hymn sheet. Kumbaya. Like what the frack happened there? And it's bullshit. It's because they were all brainwashed, indoctrinated, and programmed. And the reality is, very few doctors spoke out because they don't want to badmouth their own profession. They don't want to step out of line. They don't want to put their head above the parapet. And then they also know if they do, pow, pow. So they just shut up and stay stup. And that model, unfortunately, works across religion, ethnicity, profession, everything. And this is why I always say to people, don't choose your tribe. Choose the human tribe. Don't choose your team. Choose team humanity. Like that's the mindset you need to have in your mind. Team humanity. Yay. All right, listen. So basically, I want to talk about solutions at some point. But I had another thing I really wanted to say, and I've kind of forgotten now. It's really annoying me, but it will come back.
I wanted to talk about Israel because I thought you brought up a great point, and so my thesis on Israel is, so you're absolutely right. So the Jews of Europe were herded through the manufactured Holocaust into going to Rothschild Zionist Israel, and essentially forced to create a country. And when you have a country, now this organized crime system has a kind of base of operations where now they have diplomatic immunity. And now they can go back and forth between,
they shelter, they shelter sex deviants and pedophiles. Like the guy,
they have no extradition. So it becomes a little base where, oh, look, we get here, there's no extradition with the United States. Now they don't use that a lot. They really reserve it for the, like most cases, but Israel has the ability not to extradite, and some criminals that have committed, crimes in the United States have actually gone to, they've been convicted, but they've gone to Israel to serve the sentence. And so there's a lot of shenanigans that go on with that system, but really that base of operations not only gives them diplomatic immunity and freedom from extradition, but also, they're now in the case of the United States, they're installing politicians through AIPAC and through the Adelsons and through Trump that are now transferring billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars to Israel. That then, where does that end up? Where does that go? Who's getting that money? Nobody really knows. And so to break it down, a lot of people don't know this. Donald Trump was bailed out in 1991 or 93 by the Rothschild family. A lot of people don't know that, but during one of his major bankruptcies, he was bailed out by Rothschild Inc. A gentleman by the name of Wilbur Ross did his workout. A workout is where his debt was restructured and he was provided, financing. And so the Rothschilds, bailed him out. Wilbur Ross goes on to become Secretary of Commerce in the first Trump administration. So he's rewarded with the post of Secretary of Commerce. And then, if you go even before Trump was elected, Trump's character, so his, I believe he was swept up in this Epstein brownstone operation. I believe they've got blackmail material on him through the Epstein network. But his character was given the gravitas to run and the national, gravitas through the television show The Apprentice. A lot of people don't realize this, but his theatrical agent, Donald Trump has a theatrical agent that represents him when he's working with the Worldwide Wrestling or with NBC's The Apprentice, whatever it is. His theatrical agent is a Zionist by the name of Ari Emanuel. Ari Emanuel is the brother of Rahm Emanuel. Rahm Emanuel was the chief staff to Barack Obama and ended up being the mayor of Chicago and was an elected representative to the House of Representatives. And there's another brother named Ezekiel Emanuel, who's a eugenicist, thinks that everybody ought to die by age 75, and he was a member of Biden's COVID-19 task force. And so Trump it was his you've got a guy who was best friends with Epstein, who I guarantee you they've got blackmail material on, and so they create the legend of him as a successful businessman, even though he's had 6 different bankruptcies. Okay, they create his legend, they give him the media training, they give him the artificial gravitas to run for president, and then they finance that campaign with over 4 campaigns, both of them, the Adelsons alone, for getting AIPAC, for getting other Jewish, or Zionist connected, entities. The Adelson family alone has provided over $400 million to the Trump campaigns in 2 different election cycles in the United States. That's over 2 election cycles, but 400 million. So then they install him in the presidency, and then what does he do? He immediately increases the aid for Israel from $3.2 billion a year to $3.8 billion a year, of kind of like the annual commitment. And then Biden, after the October 7th, false flag attack of October 7th, had granted them another, I think, 17 point something million. On his way out the door, gives Israel $17 billion because he's been installed by the exact same networks. And then Trump distributes it. So Trump essentially in 2025, hands out $20 billion to Israel. And so you've got like 100% quid pro quo. And we're now threatening Iran. So the 3.8 billion and the 17 plus billion that we gave overtly and in a variety of different aid packages and arms deals and things like that, that's only one aspect of what they get. A lot of it you can't put a number on. You can't put a number on the intelligence. You can't put a number on being able selling them Palantir technology, which they're using for tools like Lavender and Where's Daddy to be able to use AI to target when an entire Palestinian's family is in the same room so they can get them with one, guided munition. You can't put a number on that. You can't put a number when we attacked Iran and when we're attacking, Israeli interests and waging war for Israel, that money isn't included in the totals. And that's additional billions and billions and billions of dollars. And so you've got an organized crime system that has an organized crime-based operations, and they're installing politicians in the United States. There's over 300 members of our House of Representatives here in the United States that are receiving money from AIPAC. And so if you divided it up between, the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, and AIPAC Party, the AIPAC Party outnumbers both the Republican and the Democratic Party in the U.S. Congress right now, and they've installed the president, and they've installed Senate, a significant portion of the Senate, and so they're spending hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars a year to install, American politicians that are then transferring billions and billions and billions of dollars back to organized crime Israel.
Oh, this is what I'm talking about. Like who's the dog and who's the tail? Who's wagging what? Like, is Israel now running the show? Is that the base of operations for the Rothschilds? And because are they the top of the head of the snake? I don't know what's going on.
I believe they are, because that's where the money's going. And so, if you say, the Vatican, we're not handing billions. We're not handing billions of dollars to the Vatican. We're not handing billion. If you say where, just follow the money. Where is the money going? Okay. The money is going to Israel, and the money is essentially being stolen through the banking system. So it's the banks.
So
who owns the banks? Who owns the monopoly media? Who's lying to us? Who's deceiving us?
You know what? I'm not being a hypocrite when I say Jewish people need to speak out. Dude, I'm not a hypocrite. I've left my cult. I left quite a while ago. I openly say that Ahmadiyya cult was a cult. It was a scam. It's bullshit. You know what? I'm actually now, I don't believe in any organized religion. I just have my direct communication with my maker, the maker of all things, the creator, right? Yeah. I think all religions now are co-opted and captured. It's all about guilt, shame, and control. Do you know what? I don't want to identify as a Muslim or a Jew or a Christian. I want to identify as a human being, as a sovereign, eternal being that's currently wearing this physical meat suit. And you know what? All of humanity, I love all of them. I don't want to be favoring any group of people. So I have left my tribe. I have walked away from it and all of that community, everything that came with it, because I don't want to be part of that. I've walked away from that tiny little group of people to welcome all of humanity. I am, I'm part of the bigger group, right? And I did the same with medicine, right? I left that cult. I left that tribe with all the comforts it came with. I was making serious money, right? 250,000 to 350,000 pounds was my average income, right? All gone. You think a podcaster makes that money? Come on, get real, right? Yeah. So I walked away from all of that because it was like, not my name anymore. I don't want this shit. I don't like this anymore. I don't feel comfortable with this anymore. This is bullshit. And what I'm trying to say is, we need more Jews to say, we're leaving Israel. Fuck this bullshit crap. You know what? None of this garbage. I'm not a Zionist anymore. I'm a proud Jew and I'm a member of Team Humanity. Nothing's going to change. You know that non-compliance thing? Until more Jews say no. Because right now, they're the ones in power.
I'll tell you, so I agree completely on the Jews. But it's
I know, but Etienne, I'm saying because they're the ones currently in power. Like, they're the one, like one Jewish person in power, right, could make the difference that like 10,000 us goy could make. Like, I'm just saying, it's a numbers game, like influence. Like it'd be great if more people were like, enough of this bullshit, enough wars. I'll give you an example, right? I'm questioning everything now. Like, anything that cannot be questioned, frankly, to me, is a lie or a deception. So a partial truth. And what I mean by that is the truth flourishes under interrogation. But you know what doesn't? Lies. Lies need censorship. Lies need cancellation. Lies need smothering. Okay, so why can't we talk about the Holocaust and what actually happened and the real numbers? Like, you're not allowed to go there. If you go there, you're like, argh. But you know what? I know, I've come to find out, and from even like older German people, guess what? After the Second World War, we killed a shit ton of Germans. And even during the war. So after this, on the Western Front, we'll talk about the Eastern Front in a second. On the Western Front, at least 2 million Germans, mainly young kids and old men, right? Because most of the fighting age men were dead, were dumped in fields. And instead of being recognized as POWs, were recognized as disarmed enemy forces, DEF. And what that meant was by naming them that and not POWs, they had no legal protections. Because if you're a POW, you need to give them food and shelter. You need to protect them from the elements. You need to allow the Red Cross access. Now they're and this is important because the language, it's all about language. Because even today, the authorities use language to control us. So they changed the language. So, you know, for example, the mRNA technology, it's not a vaccine, but they called it a vaccine. They changed the name and they changed the definition of these POWs to disarmed enemy forces. So now they're on the fields. They don't have any food or water or blankets or tents. And they died. 2 million of them. Yeah. That's genocide. And on the Eastern Front...
It's eugenics. So there's a huge eugenics component to this organized crime system.
Yeah, wait one second. And then on the Eastern Front, they did the same. They bombed Dresden, which had no military tactical advantage to it. It was just civilians. They burnt it. It was a burnt offering. It was a burnt sacrifice. It was a Holocaust of literally hundreds of thousands of Germans. Okay? And then afterwards, the Eastern Bolshevik, the same, you know, Bolshevik, look at who was it behind that. They raped all the German women, like for months. And then they said, right, enough of the rape, right, enough. I mean, that is a genocide of the German people, right? Yep. And young white Christian men killed. And then the Holodomor, young white Christian men killed. Now people would argue there's a white replacement thing going on in Europe and the West. You know, that's deliberate. Whenever you see movies and adverts, it's always a black guy with a white woman. You know, they want to get rid of whites, Europeans. And, you know, what some could argue, whites are the minority in the world, you know? Like, there's an agenda going on here. But, you know, you can't talk about it. Can't talk about it. But you cannot question the other thing. So, like, it's just, there's some weird shit going on in history. And I'm telling you right now, it's bizarre. And it's not good. And I think more people need to talk about it and say, look, not in our name. Enough is enough. You know, this is like the way I did. I walked away from my cults. More people need to walk away from the cult.
I agree completely, and you know, I'm glad that I get the pass, and I do get the ability to talk about it, and I can't be accused of being anti-Semitic, because, like I said, I love my family, I love the Jewish people, and it's not the Jews, it's intergenerational organized crime centered around banking and central banking, hiding within the Jewish community and using mythology that they created to keep the heat off of, you know, criminal activity that they're involved in. And so when you say I've left the cult, you know, I don't consider myself an American. I'm a free and independent human being. And that's another, you know, artificially engineered religion, you know, is around where you're born. And, you know, just because you're born in, you know, in East LA, you don't have to be a Crip. And just because you're born in Compton, you don't have to be a Blood. And, you know, if they can trick you into self-identifying as an American instead of a free and independent human being on Team Humanity, then that's another, you know, aspect of the religion. They're trying to trick the population into self-identifying with this large artificial tribe that they manufactured with something called a brute force manufactured consensus. And so if you don't know that term, brute force manufactured consensus, you know, that's why you think you're an American, is because it was decided for you. You're an American or you're a Brit because it was decided for you.
I agree. Well, listen, another thing I want to say is sometimes they attack their own. So Witkoff, we'll come to him in a second, lost his son Andrew to opioids. And, you know, and Witkoff is Jewish. He's a property developer. He's currently in business with the Trump people. We'll come to that in a second. But he lost his son to the opioid crisis. Now, something like 500,000 Americans, 500,000 died due to the opioid crisis. And who's behind that? The Sackler family. Their company, Purdue Pharmaceutical. And to this day, have any of them gone to jail for killing 500,000 people? Do you know?
No, they have not.
Can you imagine that was a Muslim family? Like killed 500,000 Americans? Like, what would happen? And I'm not saying this as a Muslim. I'm not Muslim. I'm just telling you, like, what the hell? And Witkoff's own son died because of the opioid crisis. And it's just, so even like the capos can be injured by each other. It's just, it's a shit show. But the Witkoff, I want to come to that quickly because you posted one of Patrick Wood's articles on your Substack. And it's talking about the tokenization and the USD1. You read that article, yeah?
I did, yeah.
And what's incredible is that the Trump family and the Witkoff family have created this cryptocurrency stablecoin, and they're acting as if it's like they're going against the banking system. Do you actually fall for that? Because I don't. I think the banking system have given the nod and said, look, our financial Ponzi scheme's coming to an end. We need
we need. I was just about to make that point. Yes,
we need.
They have no choice.
Yeah, we need crypto. We need the stable coin shit. We need to tokenize everything. The game's coming to an end, but we still want to be on top when everything comes down crashing, and we want to build the next bullshit scheme. So this is what it's going to be. You're going to pretend like you're against us and that you're like MAGA and America first, but actually you're just running an op for us. Don't you think that's what's going on?
Without a doubt. And I mean, it starts with the death of the dollar system. And so I don't know if I mentioned it to you, but I used to work on Wall Street. I was on the technology side. I built networks for market data, trading floor technology. So I know a lot about Wall Street. And the dollar system is long in the tooth. The average, length of a fiat paper currency, once it's off of a hard money standard, is, I think, I want to say something like 60 years. I forget the exact time, but both the US dollar and the British pound are now approaching like 250 plus years, and so it's long in the tooth. A lot of the value has been completely stolen out of the dollar to the point of where there's very, very little value left. And I believe that the government has been lying about the strength of the American economy. It's been lying about the inflation rate. It's been lying about who's coming to the treasury market. So I think a lot of the treasury purchases are straw purchases where they're not being made by real investors, but the Fed is or the Treasury are providing money to buy their own debt issuance. The Treasury has been caught buying, or the Fed has been caught buying. So in the United States, it's against the law for the Fed to buy in the auctions, but they can buy in the open market. And so they've been caught both, having a treasury auction, having the primary dealers buy the treasury issuance and then buying it from the primary dealer the next day, which is essentially the same thing as buying it in the auction.
So for example, isn't it the case like there's islands in the Caribbean, like the Cayman Islands, this tiny island that's buying so much US debt and it's like, what the frack? Like this tiny little island is buying like massive purchases of US debt, denominated debt.
So the Caymans in Belgium too. And so Belgium was actually accused by, like, I don't know if you know Paul Craig Roberts. He was the former Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Treasury. He coined the term Reaganomics. He was the editorial editor of the Wall Street Journal. But in 2014, he openly accused the Fed of buying its own issuances through Belgium, because Belgium had racked up an astounding like $200+ billion worth of treasuries, which was like 3 or 4 times their entire GDP. The excuse is that Euroclear is there and that these are really purchases that are like, that's the excuse given. But like if the Assistant Secretary of the Treasury and the editor of the Wall Street Journal doesn't believe it, I don't believe it either. Like I'm suspicious as well. But between the Caymans and Belgium right now, it's just an incredible amount of the treasury purchases. So the system is long in the tooth. The system's dying. There's very little purchasing power left in the dollar, so it's going to collapse. So what is the next game? Where are they going to move the 3-card Monte table? They're going to move it to another corner, and the new game is going to be some kind of programmable digital money that they're probably gonna, they're gonna try and transition society to. I expect them to offer, a UBI to the majority of the population for going along with it. So when the dollar collapses, there will be a wallet. Everybody will be instructed to download the wallet, and then you're gonna get your UBI, and they're gonna try and force everybody onto a system that, number one, allows them to digitally surveil every single purchase that you make, every single nickel. No more garage sales, no more handing money to your grandchildren or, whatever, no more cash, no more, hiding cash. Every single dollar will be taxed and surveilled. And they want to have the ability to turn off truth tellers like you and I, so that we don't have the ability to buy or sell, and so that we can be controlled and nobody's going to say anything or spoil the game.
It's dark. It's dark. And you know what?
That's what they're trying to take humanity right now.
And it'll also be like timestamps. So it'll be like, here's your UBI for a month. Here's $1,000. You're with your USD OneCoin or whatever, and you need to spend it within the month. So you can't save. They don't want you to be able to save, because if you what do these multi-generational crime syndicates do? They save. They plan ahead like decades. They don't want us to do that. They want us, the boot on our face, and we are always looking down. They never want us to be able to look up and push them away. So we won't be able to save. We won't be able to transfer the money to our children. We won't ever be able to fight back. And we'll have to buy their shit. We'll have to buy their poison food, their lab-grown shit. We'll have to consume their porn. And you know what? You can't subscribe to Doc Malik's Substack. You can't buy Etienne's book. You can't eat regenerative beef steak. No. And, after the month, boom, your credits are all gone. If you've left $90, tough luck, it's gone. And you know, there's so much evil deception that can be placed into it, but it'll be done gradually. So first of all, the government will come and say, we're giving you 5,000. Here you go. Here's 5,000. Every monkey's going to go for it. Oh, I got 5,000. And then afterwards they'll be like, oh, it's a bit tough now. It's going to be 2,000. And everybody, oh shit. Oh, and you're going to get taxed on your 2,000. So that's 1,500. Oh shit. Now you can only spend it in the month and carry over 100. You know, everybody like, oh shit. Then it'll be like, you have to spend it on this and this and that. And then before you know it, we're fucked.
And you mentioned the time box, but it can also be geofenced.
Yep.
You might not be able to buy gasoline to get to Washington D.C. or to London or to the city or to wherever it is outside of your 15-minute city or outside of wherever you live. And so, you could, that money, might not spend in other places. It might not spend for gasoline outside of a certain, place. And so that really is, I believe that really is the ultimate goal. I think that when they talk about the Great Reset, that's what they're talking about. They've also set up stocks and securities to be swept up in something called the Great Taking, which we cover on my Substack at artofliberty.substack.com.
David Webb's talked about that. I know.
Yeah. So I highly recommend that book. So they want to impoverish everybody because they don't want there to be independent wealth. They don't want people to be safe and secure and well capitalized. They want people to be dead broke, living in a militarized police state. And so they're bringing in the police state. They're bringing it in with the surveillance. They're bringing it in with Palantir. They're bringing it in with, turning over the government databases to Doge, turned it over to Palantir. They're bringing it in through they love to have vaccine cards for everybody. They'd love to, be able to control you with a vaccine passport. They're trying for 100% control where we're trying for 100% freedom. And so I think that really is the answer to 100% control is we have to go in the opposite direction. We've got to get rid of we've got to expose the illegitimacy and the criminality of government widespread. It needs to become widespread knowledge that government has been the biggest scam in all of human history. The indoctrinated legitimacy of government, has been the biggest scam in all of human history. And I think that once that really is the solution to all of this, because that's how they're doing this.
Okay, so that's raising awareness. I get that. Educating people. That's what my podcast is about. That's what your platform's about. Listen, it's tough, man. I mean, we are being squeezed. Algorithms. I've been frozen at 218,000 for like 6 months now. I was climbing. And then I remember the day it all just switched off. They've caged me now. I've got freedom of speech, but no reach. Right. And
same thing.
New people can't access me. And I know you've got the same problem. So they're throttling us. Right. And that's why I say to my listeners, if you really want to help, you don't need to it's not just becoming a paid subscriber. One of the things you can do is just share my content with as many people as possible. Tell people, wake them up, because all they're consuming is mainstream crap, Camp 1, and then alternative media that's also controlled, Camp 2. There's very few Camp 3, genuine Camp 3, totally independent, uncaptured people out there. I mean, it's a lonely place, dude. I don't know about you, but I realized it's quiet. Wow, it's really bad. And what we need to do is get as many people to wake up. But apart from that, what other solutions are there? How do we get rid of this Jewish mafia that's at the top, this globalized Jewish mafia, organized crime syndicate? Because I think we already have a one world government. I'm telling you, I think the Ayatollahs are in their pocket. Look at Pakistan. Yeah. Pakistan just took on their USD1 stablecoin because they already control Pakistan and the Pakistani politicians. They locked up Imran Khan. They put him in jail. It's stitched up. Every government's stitched up. Russia's passing through the vaccine passport. They've got a MAX system. Everything's digital ID, all the digital government documents. Every government...
Putin was a young global leader of the World Economic Forum.
Absolutely. And guess what? He's tight with Chabad Lubavitch. And Chabad Lubavitch, I mean, they must be another one of the tools of the Rothschilds. I mean, they're everywhere. I mean, they're freaking everywhere. They're in DC at the Oval Office. They've got like 1,500 places in the UK, 3,000 in America. Like they're Putin's like personal rabbi. I mean, listen to what I mean. The control mechanism is everywhere. We are in effect living in a one world government now, aren't we?
Without a doubt. And so I think a lot of this fighting between the governments is to, number one, to menace, like we menace the Russian population that then cowers for security to the Russian government. The Russian government menaces our population so that we cower for security to the American government. And I think a lot of the warfare between different countries is both for eugenics to keep the population down to a more manageable size, because it's harder to manage larger populations, but also they're kind of tricking the alpha males of each country into going to going along with the system, going through the military basic training, setting their morality aside, and then they fight them against each other. So they kill off all of the alpha males that have the courage to go into the military, that have the courage to be able to that should be pointed at the ruling class, running game on them, stealing the value out of their money, stealing their money through confiscatory taxation, running games like the COVID. That's where the military should be focused. But instead, they've got the military fighting against the militaries of the other countries, so they kill them off, so only this a bunch of beta males are left, and that they're more easily managed because they've got a program that's just killing off the best and the brightest and the strongest and the ones that have the courage to to actually take up arms and fight.
Absolutely, and it's a blood sacrifice, right? As I want to also ask more about solutions in a second, but I'm going to read out something to you that I think is very, very important. It's a song that was sung by someone, and I don't know their name, I don't know who it is, but it was about Remembrance Day. And here, listen to this. I stand in silence today. We are told to bow our heads. We are told to wear the poppy and honor the fallen. But nobody ever asks who sent them to fall. The poppy is not just a flower, it is the blooming of blood, the entry wound of the bullet, a ritual of memory designed to renew itself every generation. A cycle that continues because we have never broken the spell behind it. War has always been a blood sacrifice, not for freedom, not for land. You are the property of the state. On your birth certificate, you're recorded as an infant of the state. When you do not claim your estate, the state becomes your parent, and a parent has authority to send its child to war. This is not patriotism. This is administration. This is why the courts are banks. The judge is the trustee. The prosecutor is the creditor. The clerk is the accountant. The body is the collateral. The signature is the sacrifice. The same signature that binds you into debt is the signature that stamped the military tag placed around the neck of the man who went to die. Dog tags, the dogs of war, the soldiers. Here is what they never teach in any school. During the World War, 17 and 16 nations were in conflict. Flags, uniforms, languages, borders. But on paper, in trust law and charter and treaty, they were all owned by the crown. So who were they really fighting for? Children of the state, sent to slaughter each other by the same creditor, so they forget, so they never claim their estate too. This is the method. Remove the men and women. Women stand unprotected and overburdened. Remove the fathers, and the children turn to the state for authority. Break the lineage, and you break memory. Break memory, and you break sovereignty. Break sovereignty, and you break time itself. This is how a people are conquered without ever being told they were conquered. And then they're told to bow their heads at the cenotaph, senate, court, a monument not of remembrance but of contract. The names carved in stone are not just memorials, they are ledgers marked into the land, a record of the dead and of blood. And we are instructed to stand in silence, because silence is tacit acquiescence, the necessary consent, the silence, the ritual, the bond. But remembrance is not silence. The purpose they were given was a lie. To honor the dead does not mean to obey the system that sacrificed them. To honor the dead means to refuse the next war. Lawful, real me still exists. The living man and the living woman of the land still exist. The estate is still claimable. The crown only rules the unclaimed. We honor the dead by claiming ourselves. We honor the dead by protecting the living. We honor the dead by saying, not again. not for bank, not for crown, not for flag, not for fight, not for lies called history. They died believing they were saving us. So now it is our turn to save them. This is remembrance. Remember them. Remember who you are. Remember them. That's it.
That's beautiful. Who did that?
I don't know.
Can you send me that afterwards? I think I'm gonna post that next Memorial Day.
I'll share my Substack. It's all in there.
Oh, perfect. Excellent.
Dude, can you see it? I get really upset. I get so upset. Right, so listen, tell me, solutions other than awareness, dude, like, because the game's stacked against us. Like, what the frack can we do to bring down this criminal mafia?
So I think the first thing that your audience needs to know, and I don't know what other guests that you've had that are voluntarists, but one of the kind of the pillars that need to fall in the human mind is people need to really understand that we don't need government, that you could get every single thing that you want the government to do would be done better, faster, and cheaper by the free market, by armed protective service companies, by dispute resolution. They call armed protective services police. So you'd still have the police, but it wouldn't be the monopoly police. There would be, competition, and different firms would compete on who can protect a neighborhood better. Dispute resolution that they call the courts. The majority of disputes in the United States now go to private arbitration, and you can have private arbitration companies just, doing everything that the government court system does. Everything the government does, most of what the government does is a provider of services, whether that service is delivering the mail or air traffic control or running the worst train system, in the civilized world here in the United States. Canada privatized their air traffic control system over a decade ago. It's the second largest air traffic control system in the world after the United States, and planes are not falling out of the sky in Canada. So every single thing that the government does, except for redistribution, which is immoral and shouldn't be done at all, but everything the government does would be done by the free market, by nonprofits, by genuine charities. And we would all be crazy wealthier, number one, if the government just forget the confiscatory taxation and the tariffs and the VATs and all the hidden taxes, and every time you get a cigar, every time you buy pay your cell phone bill, or your all the hidden taxes, and every time you get a gallon of gas. If they just weren't stealing the value out of the money, we'd be crazy wealthy. And so the other thing is there would be a lot more harmony in society, because you wouldn't have to be fighting among the population over whose ruler gets imposed on everybody else. And there's a karmic debt to that, because that's if you're voting, if you're supporting a politician, you're essentially advocating violence on your friends and your neighbors and your colleagues that disagree. You're saying, hey, this guy's schemes and plans and whatever, they're so important, or this other person is so bad, we've just got to get him out of office, which is such an easy game and trick to play on the population. Just have the media present, one of the two different politicians or three different politicians or whatever as being worse than the other one, to trick the population into voting for one instead of the other. It's such an easy game to play on the population. But like, if you're participating in that game, if you're advocating violence on your, if you think about the what the politicians promise, they promise to rob everybody and put these policies into prescription. And so the Democrat says, hey, elect me and I'm going to rob everybody, and we're going to put these schemes into practice. And the Republican says, no, elect me and we'll rob everybody and we'll put these in. And voluntarists are saying, like, hey, why don't we not rob anybody? The world is a self-organizing system. It produces spontaneous order. Everything the government does would be done better, faster, and cheaper. And so you don't have to advocate that your neighbors get robbed. You don't have to participate in the political system. In the United States, on the school board level, there's a real war going on in the United States at the school board level. And if you lose, you might get critical race theory forced on your kid. You might get LGBTQ studies forced on your kid in parts of Michigan and Minnesota. You might get Islamic studies forced on your kid. And so there's a knife fight at the school board level versus, in a system of real freedom. You'd be wealthy enough. Number one, the government's not stealing your money for an education you don't want. You'd be able to afford any kind of education you want for your kid. If you want Montessori, you get Montessori. If you want Waldorf, you get Waldorf. If you want a trade school, you get a trade school. You're in control. You make the decision, and there's no need to fight with your neighbor over control of the school board. So there's a lot more harmony in society. So it would be, much more harmonious and prosperous. And so really that's the number one message that society really needs to understand is you just do not need government. That there are mechanisms in the economy that essentially provide public goods for free that the government is doing that society would provide for free. And so that's an important thing. The other important thing, like the specifics, my favorite, resistance technique is you just got to pay it in cash. We have to keep cash alive to keep programmable digital money off of our banks. And so we have to insist on cash. We've got to pay in cash, even if it's not convenient. And that really is the number one way that you can kind of stick it to the bank as well. Because number one, if you're paying in cash, you're starving the bank of 1.5 to, in some cases 3% that they're charging the merchant. Okay, so number one, the bank's not making that 1.5 to 3%. And at the same time, the merchant is saving 1.5 to 3%. And the merchant is able to take some of that and keep it off the books so he doesn't give it to the organized crime, lying, thieving, stealing government. And so now he's able to maybe buy a guitar lesson for his son. And that money is that cash money typically stays in the community where electronic dollars, go offshore. And those are the dollars that are leaving the community and not circulating and creating, economic prosperity within the community.
What happens when they cancel cash and say, right, this is it? Everyone, you're what?
So they can't cancel it if people don't go along with it. And so that's really one of the, the big issues is what happens when the dollar fails. And so, some of the things that I do is I pay people in goldbacks. I don't know if you guys have, I don't think y'all have goldbacks, but here in the United States, there's flexible spendable gold starting to circulate. That's what a goldback looks like. And that's flexible spendable gold. I give these in tips, and I give these to friends and relatives and for birthdays and things like that. And so I'm diversifying my community out of.
Is that made of gold? Is that made of gold?
Oh yeah, that's actually flexible spendable 24 karat gold.
Oh wow.
And there's different sizes. This one is 1/1000th of an ounce of gold. There's one that's even smaller, that's 1/2000th of an ounce of gold. There's one that's 1/50th of an ounce of gold, so it's physically larger and a little bit thicker. And so you're moving yourself out of only dollar denominated assets into money of intrinsic worth with a 5,000 year plus history of economic stability behind it. And so I barter silver as well. I just literally we went to a coin shop yesterday, Stage Jewelry and Coin here in Memphis, Tennessee, and bought some coins for my son for his birthday. And so I'm sending him some, physical silver coins as part of, his birthday gift. And so those are, keeping the more you can take a community or a family or whatever, and you can diversify them out of the rapidly depreciating fiat paper tickets of a bankrupt empire, the better. And so, and those assets are going off. And so I've been taking these gold backs, and like I sell my book at different freedom events. And so I've been selling my book for gold backs. They used to be worth $3. Now they're 10. And so it's helping protect your purchasing power over what could have been lost.
No, I get that. I get that. I get that. Right. Listen, I'm going to have to close soon, and I'm going to ask you to come back, please.
Oh, I'd love to. This has been an absolutely fascinating conversation, and I can tell you are my brother from another mother, and it's been wonderful to really have this conversation, and I wish I look forward to the next time we get to do it again.
Oh man, we're gonna have a great time, because the reality is, look, we've still got a lot to talk about, right? We've got so much to talk about. I mean, your book covers so much more, and I really want to go more into voluntarism and, smashing up the left-right paradigm that we've sold, the bullshit about that. I want to talk more about the censorship industrial complex. I want to talk about the centralization of, like media, corporations, banks, food. There's so much we can talk about. So I'd quite like to do that, please. So, and I think you can also then expand a little bit more about voluntarism so that people really understand, like, there is an actual tangible, realistic option, alternative option to what we currently have. But anyway, listen, so we're going to get you back. I'm thinking May, June, okay? But we'll finalize that later. But right now, last question of the day. Actually, no, not last question. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I am 56 years young.
What the frack? You look great, by the way. And also, do you have any kids?
Yeah, so I've got, like I said, so it's my I've got one that's about to turn 24, and then I've got another. I've got one of them's out of college, one of them's about to graduate from college this spring.
And now you got a fiance. Are you gonna have another baby?
Trying like heck.
Okay, so. Oh man, I've got 3. I'm done. I'm 50, and the idea of nappies and babies and no, I don't have the energy for that. But I think you should have babies. I take it your fiance is hopefully white, because you guys need to make as many freedom-loving babies as possible. Like,
So
go out and procreate.
Thank you.
I wonder what face she's making at you right now.
You got yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And
right.
Seriously, I look forward to the next conversation. And yeah,
You're just like, shut up, stop asking me awkward questions, because it's really difficult right now. But listen, last question of the day. You're surrounded by your loved ones, your beautiful fiance, and your children, your massive brood. Before you die and meet your maker, what words of wisdom and advice would you give them?
Freedom is important. Freedom is the ability to chart your own destiny. Freedom is sacred, and we have to leave freedom to our children. It's a legacy, here in the United States. As bad as it is, we still have, more freedom than a lot of other places on the planet. And we still have a lot of prosperity that is the legacy from the freedom that we had before government got entrenched in society. And we need to be able to leave it to our kids and our grandkids and others. And so, I mean, that's the important thing. It's essential for human flourishing.
Amazing. Beautiful. Hi, everybody. Little interruption to remind you that I offer a consultation service. If you want to navigate the sick care system, if you've got an acute illness that you're dealing with, or even a chronic illness that you need to shake off and recover from or reverse, if you want to get a second opinion, you want some advice, knowing what questions to ask of your doctor, I'm here for you. I have a unique position, having been a mainstream doctor and surgeon for 25 years, but also someone who understands the alternative health care system. And I'm telling you, there's minefields in both. Sometimes it can be so confusing knowing which way to turn and what's right and what's not right, because there's so much conflicting noise and advice. So I'm practicing medicine as one truly should be, which is empowering and educating the patient to be their own doctor. I'm offering consultations where I empower you with wisdom and knowledge so that you ask better questions and you can find solutions that are typically concealed or hidden from you by the mainstream doctors. I believe in medical ethics and I believe in informed consent. I have no other agenda. I practice first, do no harm to the patient. So if this resonates with you, please visit my web docmalik.com, where you can see the booking page and read all the reviews from past patients that I've been able to help. And while you're there, check out my website, because there's a shop section with affiliate links to products that my family and I use. These are all wonderful companies. They're all aligned with our values. And these products are not things that I would not be recommending if they were genuinely not brilliant, such as Sea Green supplements, sauna, and Nudum skincare, etc., etc. So do check out my affiliate page. It's another way that you can support this show. And another thing you can do is just share my content. And if you haven't already, follow my channel and leave a review if you can on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Okay, folks, that's enough of me. Back to the show. Thank you so much. Lots of love. Before we finish, again, I just want to thank you all for supporting this work. Your support keeps these conversations independent, uncensored, and focusing on what truly matters. No gatekeeping, no limited hangout, no controlled opposition. If you found today's discussion meaningful, please share it widely with those who need to hear it. And if you want to explore your own health situation more deeply, my consultations are always available at docmalik.com. And whether you're new here or have been with me from the beginning, I truly appreciate you being part of this community. Love, Doc. I, Ahmed Malik, am a private civilian protected by the Geneva Convention. My Substack, social media posts, and podcasts are my personal experiences, observations, and opinions. This information is for educational purposes only. Although I am a doctor, I am not your doctor, and I am not providing medical or legal advice to you or to the wider public. I am not licensed or registered with the GMC or any other licensing board. The responsibility for the interpretation, due diligence, and use of the information from my Substack and my podcast lies with you, the viewer and or listener. Please do your research and use your discernment. It is not my intention to harass, intimidate, offend, defame, conspire, blackmail, coerce, or cause anxiety, alarm, or distress to any man or woman, and the information presented here is done so with peaceful and honourable intentions.
Enjoy, folks.